Significant Stones of the Bible, Part 3. Uh, I'm picking up in 1 Samuel chapter 17. It's a story, obviously, it's the story of David and Goliath. And the Philistine has challenged Israel. David hears about it, and uh, he takes up the challenge, even though he's younger than his brothers, maybe a little too young to be on the battlefield. He seems like a healthy, strong fellow, but they consider him still on the too young for all this side. And he seems ill equipped. Saul, king of Israel at the time, tries to give him a sword and all this kind of stuff. And David tries it on. It doesn't work for him. He says he can't use it. So instead, um, it says in chapter 17, pick up in 39. So David girded his sword over his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. So David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not tested them. And David took them off. And he took his stick in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in the shepherd's bag that he had, even in his pouch. And his sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. So there's a valley between the two armies, and the Philistines are on one hill, and the Israelites are on another hill. The Philistines are well equipped and have been beating up Israel for some years. It's been so bad that they have destroyed or taken away Israel's ability to work with metal. That there are no blacksmiths in Israel, and so their army probably doesn't have anything for swords. When they need blacksmithing done, they have to go to the Philistines and have them repair their plows and axes and things like that. So they're not selling them swords. They're not fixing their swords, and Israel's army is a sad looking group of guys with you know clubs and sticks, and sticks with points on the end, and whatever. They tried, like I say, they tried to equip David with some of their cool stuff, but what cool stuff they had, and David said, I can't wear this, I can't use this, it's not what I'm used to. And instead he goes and he picks up 5 smooth stones from the brook in this valley, and he puts them in his sack, and he goes off to fight the giant, the Philistine, with his sling and his stones. Now, let me say that the sling, uh, it, it's the sling is actually a really pretty awesome uh, weapon, I guess. The the kind of sling that they used, well, for whatever reason around here we have used them, and we'll put something together that like what they had, and have chucked all kinds of things. We've had sling tennis ball battles and things like that, but we've also picked up stones and slung stones to see what that was like. And I can tell you, you could definitely kill somebody with one of those things. So you shouldn't underestimate the capacity of the sling. Um, that's really not the focus of the lesson that we get in the story. It's not so much that a sling couldn't kill a giant. You could totally kill a giant with a sling and a stone. But instead, it's more about where David's faith is. That he has faith in what gifts God has used in him. He's not trying to be somebody he's not by putting on the king's armor, carrying around somebody else's sword. He's being who he is, and those are the gifts that he has. He can use a sling, and he can sling a stone, and that's what he's got. And so he goes. As it goes along, I'll skip ahead to verse 48. It says, "Then it happened when the Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David, that David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand into his bag, and he took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine in the forehead. And the stone sank in his forehead, so that he fell on his face to the ground. And thus David prevailed over the Philistine with sling and stone, and he struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in David's hand." That's awesome. The fact that David is a young guy who has, he says, I have fought the bear, I fought lion, I've done those things, but he's never been in a battle, he's never been in an army, he's never been in a real battle. But when the giant that is terrifying everyone else makes these boasts against the God of Israel, he is compelled. He can't let it go on, and he responds to it saying, "You come to me with sword and whatever, but I come to you in the name of the Lord." Like, that's what I have, and that's what I'm coming with, and so there's nothing special, but he is absolutely courageous based on his faith that God is going to do something. And so the sling and the stone, it's not that those are insignificant weapons. It's that they are not noble weapons, and they're not special. There's no story of a lady of a lake, rising up to give King Arthur this stone. Hey, here's a stone. Try this. See how that works. It's a sword. There's no stones, sling of destiny. These are that it's an insignificant. It's a cheap, low dollar weapon, and yet David is confident that God will use him because that's what's needed at that moment. So the lesson, I think, is that we should have confidence that God can use us regardless. It's not an issue of how great your gift is. It's an issue of where we put our faith. God can do great things with what people might consider poor gifts. You don't have to be a great preacher to be an effective preacher. You don't have to be a great prayer to have effective prayers. You don't have to be wildly, abundantly gifted to be effective. That you should have faith. You should believe that God would bless what you're doing because He's called you to this. He's put you in this place. Here you are. And so, yeah, if He put you here, He wants to use you here. So use the gifts you got. And that's my encouragement, I guess, in the Significant Stones of the Bible, Part 3.